Thank you all for joining us this evening. So this is the first one of two webinars we've got this spring. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Scott Chappell. I work for the Cricket Foundation, and I'm the lead tutor or coach developer for our coach education program in Somerset as well. Our topic for this evening is how to develop a positive, supportive and enabling culture within teams and clubs. And I'm delighted that Somerset County Cricket Club Director of Cricket, Andy Hurry, is with us this evening. There's a bit of background on Andy, for those of you that haven't come across him yet, which I'm sure isn't anyone on the call. He was a Royal Marine before he joined Somerset in 2001 as a fitness instructor. Between 2001 and 2014, he held different roles at the club, including second 11 coach, first 11 coach, and director of high performance, in which he oversaw the transition of young players into the first team. In 2007, in his role as first team coach alongside his captain, Justin Langer, he led Somerset to the County Championship's second division title. In 2014, he left to work for the ECB as the new head of the England Development Programme. But luckily for Somerset, in 2017, he returned as Director of Cricket and has overseen a vast improvement in performances on the field, including trophy success in 2019 and huge changes off it as well. So, Andy, firstly, thank you for joining us this evening. How's the winter been for you so far?
Thank you, Scott, and good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure being here this evening, and already recognising a number of people on the call. So hello to everyone that had the privilege of coming across previously. The winter's been fascinating. One of the key things about first-class cricket and working in a professional environment is you want to get your systems, your structures in place, and you're waiting on a lot of information to be able to put your plans in place as well. And there's been a number of delays that regrettably have put us under a bit of pressure to get things done very, very quickly. So it's been hectic, but it's also been enjoyable. I've really enjoyed watching players overseas performing really well. We obviously had a couple of guys involved in the Under-19 World Cup, so that's really pleasing to see players coming from the recreational game, being involved in the pathway and then go on to represent their country. And I think it was something that a lot of people got behind. Observing some of our players in some of the domestic competitions across the globe as well has been really, really exciting. So it's been a busy winter, but we're very much looking forward to the start of the new season. And on Friday, we're off to Abu Dhabi for a bit of warm weather training outside on some grass before undertaking a couple of pre-season games here at the county ground.
Nice. I'd love to talk more about 2 weeks in Abu Dhabi, but I'd feel as jealous as everyone else, I'm sure. I think before we kind of get into everything, it's probably worth mentioning the wide range of people on the call tonight. So coaches from different environments, from clubs to schools to district coaches, county coaches, and across a number of age groups as well, kind of from the very start of the game in All-Stars 5-6-year-olds all the way through to guys and girls working within the adult game as well. The plan is to have a sort of conversation for about 45 minutes. I'm sure we might veer off in slightly different directions at time, but developing and creating a culture with a focus, and Andy's wealth of experience and knowledge from his life as a Marine and his roles within cricket as well, I'm sure will give everyone on here tonight some useful ideas to go back to your different environments with. And we'll also save some time at the end as well to ask some questions. So feel free to pop any questions into the chat box as we go along if they spring up, and we'll get to those at the end of the evening as well. So we'll kick off, Andy. We'll go for a bit of a two-parter. So when we talk about team and club culture, what does that mean to you, and what does a positive, supporting and enabling environment look, feel and sound like?
I think it's a really intriguing question to kick us off. I've been very, very fortunate that I spent 10 years in the Royal Marines and to the forces, and particularly the Royal Marines, was their tradition, their professionalism. And I was really excited when I walked through the doors at Lympstone back in the 80s as I embarked on my training. And the opportunity to understand how teams work. And I took a lot of learning from that environment, not only in training, but through the 10 years worth of services at Norton Manor Camp, down in Plymouth, at 42 Commando up in Scotland with Arbroath. But what was fascinating for me was moving into the professional world And, I was very, very fortunate after a period of embedding myself into the professional game to have the opportunity to lead from the front. And I was really, really excited about that opportunity. And I'm also very apprehensive about it, having never coached or led in the professional game and not coming from the professional game background. There was a lot of anxiety around that. And during my first year, again, I took a lot of learning from the way I led, but it became very evident to me that we needed to do something about our culture. We needed to move it to be more professional based on some of the values and beliefs and behaviours that I understood from my time in the service, but also considering what other exceptional, successful teams did around sport. And one of the first things that became quite evident to me is that when you're looking to evolve a culture, it takes time to embed that. And at times it can be a little bit frustrating because the reality is that people aren't ready to move at the same pace that you want to move. And I thought that it was really, really important that we were very clear around what our common goal was going to be moving forward. So where do we want to get to? And I felt it was hugely important to be really collaborative around how we achieved that objective and that goal. And I also wanted to be very collaborative around, the values that we were going to have as an organisation, the behaviours we were going to demonstrate on a day-to-day basis, and what was going to be our identity around our cricket and the way we work behind the scenes as well. I felt very strongly that really needs to be really inclusive, but also being very, very mindful that people are different. And what I might like might not be the same as what someone else might like as well. But underpinning everything we were working towards, it was about being more successful, being more competitive. It was about developing an environment that really nurtured potential. So to be very, very clear around identifying talent and ensuring that we put the right systems and support in place. We've got the right people in the background that would enable that talent to really develop, really grow, and go on to fulfill their aspirations, while also being very open to, at times, people are going to find things very, very challenging. It was important that we develop the skills as a coach and a support staff to be able to nurture that talent on that journey.
Cool. So I guess you mentioned that not everyone will be in the same place as you, or not everyone would have the same thoughts of you or want the same thing of you as you. But how did you kind of mold and shape that and move that forward together?
Yeah. So what was really important was that, a lot of good things had happened historically, and we had to recognize that. And it was also very, very important that we had to be very clear around where we needed to get to, and understanding then that there was a gap from where we are on that day and where we needed to get to. So that was our gap analysis. So it was important to bring people on the journey that they understand. The real key message for me is that vision was a collective vision. It wasn't Andy Hurrey's vision. It wasn't Justin Langer's vision. It was a collective vision that everyone had contributed towards. We had some really good open discussions around some of the differences that we had. And actually, we had to be prepared as a club to concede on some things, understanding that when we started this journey, it was going to be really, really important for us to get people on the bus with us and to come on that journey with us. And again, it was really, really important for us that to continue people to stay on the bus, we had to make some decisions around how we're going to operate that were going to be really impactful right at the very, very start. So it was about prioritizing what were the easy wins going to be for us, that people go, okay, this is working. I want some more of this. And all of a sudden you start to get quite a bit of momentum. But in the background, understanding when you go through that sort of transition, that there's this emotional wave of people feeling different at different stages. So I could be at the front leading, and I'm full of energy and I'm really enthusiastic and I'm finding ways to overcome some of the challenges because I've got so much energy. Whereas someone else might be also in the same position as me, where they're right with me and they can just see the vision we're going on, and they've got so much energy that no matter what happens, they just see everything through a very positive lens. The reality is that not everybody's going to come on that journey at the same pace as you. And you've got to have the awareness that there's going to be some people, hopefully a good percentage of people, that are going to join you and have that energy at the start and continue to keep that energy. There's going to be some people that are just a little bit unsure, and they're going to need to see some positive impact, some good decisions that are being made, that we're going in the right direction, and then hopefully they'll become more of a core group with more energy moving forward. But also there's going to be some people that at times they're going to find it quite difficult. They're going to be quite frustrated. It might have an impact on their opportunities. So they're going to be frustrated, angry with that. And it's about demonstrating some empathy with those people as well, to hopefully give them the support that they need to be able to come on this journey with you. So having an appreciation that at different times people are experiencing different emotions, I think, is also very, very important. But the key thing was, underpinning everything we did, it was all about making people better. And people want to get better. They want to have fun. They want to enjoy playing sport. They want to win. And if you can bring that all together and understand what your limitations are, what is realistically achievable for you as an organisation, a club moving forward, understanding where you are right now, understanding the gap between where you are and where you want to get to, clearly sharing that message repeatedly, getting people connected to that, no matter what level they're working within your organisational club, then you've got a really good chance of being able to deliver a new culture over time.
Cool. And I guess so that process you went through is, and a lot of kind of those conversations around that, is that group conversations as a playing group? Is it in the wider environment? Is it individual conversations? Is it surveys, questionnaires? What did that process look like? How did you get to that ultimate goal and then kind of work back from there almost, I guess?
So what I'm referring to at the moment is what we undertook in the winter of 2006 and 2007. During that previous season, it was my first year as head coach, and we didn't have a very good season at all. I was feeling under a bit of pressure, and I recognised that we needed to do things differently. And as I referred to earlier on, it's really important to me to be very collaborative, to bring people in, get them involved. So what we agreed to do was to identify a range of people from people who had key responsibilities within the club. So that would have been the chief executive, that would have been the director of cricket at the time, it would have been myself, it would have been the captain, it would have been some of the senior players, and it would have been a mixture of other players and other support staff within the organisation. It was a group of about 10 people who met approximately about once every 2 months, who started to have good, open, collaborative discussions around the direction we were looking to take moving forward. And after every one of those meetings, it was very clear around what our next step was going to be. And it was everyone's responsibility within that meeting to go out and to start drip feeding some of those key messages down to the wider organisation. And we found that worked really effectively. But the key was, it was a wide range of different people from within the club. So I've been very fortunate that I've had some really, really positive experiences in club cricket here in Somerset. Firstly with Taunton Dean Cricket Club, then Wemden Cricket Club, and currently with Wellington Cricket Club. Three really positive environments that's always been about people having fun, enjoying the game, supporting each other, and working towards a common objective. And if I relate this to club cricket, or I relate this to a school organisation, or I relate this to a pathway team, it's about understanding who the key influences are within your environment, who's going to have the opportunity to make an impact, who's going to have the opportunity to drip feed down some of these key messages, bringing them together, have an open dialogue, understanding some of the challenges they're facing, but get to a point in time where you're very, very clear where you want to get to, be very, very clear of the strengths that you've currently got, and understand the steps that you're going to look to undertake in time to achieve that objective. But for me, it's always been about a collaborative approach and having the energy that when someone pushes back against you, you've got really strong rationale to demonstrate that this is the purpose, these are the steps that we're looking to take, and these are the objectives we're looking to achieve. And if you've got the right objectives, it's very, very difficult for a small number of people to argue against if it's in everyone's best interest moving forward. One of the exciting things for me about club cricket and pathway cricket and professional cricket is that there's a lot of common themes where if I relate it to a story around the professional environment, I'm sure there's a number of people on this call tonight that'll be able to put it into context of their own environment. So you'll all have committees or you'll have boards that everybody falls underneath, and it's important you've got some representation from your board. I think the next key thing is that you've got some really strong representation from your leaders within the club, so your captains, so whether that's your first team captain, second team captain, third team captain. I think it's important you've got some representation from your age group coaches and age group managers, and if you bring those people together and you understand where you want the club to go to in the next 3 to 5 years, it becomes quite simple to work out a strategy about how you can all align and get behind. So every decision you're making is in the best interest of the club and the future of the club. And one of the great stories that I reflect back on was the role of the academy director back in 2006, who was further away from the first team performances. However, really bought into what we were looking to achieve over time, because he can make the connection between his role and the players he was seeing within the county talent pathway, because they were going to be the future of the club. And then together we were going on this journey, and whether you were playing Somerset under 12s, you're in the Somerset Academy, or whether you're playing second team cricket or first 11 cricket, everything we did was reflected in the values, the behaviours, the identity of the way we were looking to play cricket. And before you know it, you've got players transitioning from county age group cricket into the academy seamlessly. You've got academy players transitioning to the professional environment, playing second team cricket seamlessly. And then you get players transitioning from second team cricket into the first 11 seamlessly. And that's ideally what you're looking to work.
Brilliant, thank you, Andy. Look, some really, really interesting ways of how you've kind of approached it and gone about it in those conversations and working at those different levels. We mentioned at the start about the different people on the call. So some will potentially be able to have that influence within a club to pull that club together. Others might be just coaching a particular age group or something like that. So outside of kind of having that influence over the bigger part of the club, what does it look like at team level? So for a coach with their under 13 team who's got some ideas, how do they go about bringing in those values and that into their side, as opposed to what's going on kind of the bigger picture club stuff? What would that look like to you?
I think it's really important to keep going back to the maturity of the group. So when you've got a more mature group, so if you're working at first team club level, you're likely to have more mature players within the group, so you can involve them more in the direction that you're looking to move towards. And as you go down the age groups into age group cricket, it's likely that you may have 1 or 2 players who are really their age, and it might be important that you either consult with them about the direction of travel you're looking to go in and bring them into those conversations. but it more may come down to yourself as coach or the manager that you've got, that you're sharing with the team consistently how we go about playing, what our behaviours are going to be on the field. And you want to encourage your players, whenever they demonstrate that, you give them a lot of positive feedback, because this is what we're all about. And it's important that, you know, clubs connect. So players or senior leaders within an organisation, a club, are invested and curious around what's going on at the under 10s, under 12s, under 15s. And again, when they come down and observe those behaviours and that way of playing cricket at that level, they're also positively reinforcing it and taking those stories back further up the chain within the club. I think that's really, really important. And we want to encourage young players and our coaches at different age groups within our clubs to have an invested interest and the curiosity around the under 15s, the under 19s, second 11, third 11 cricket, but also first 11 cricket. We want to make it as much as a family as we possibly can. I mean, I truly believe that we've all got a responsibility to work up the chain, and we've all got a responsibility to work down the chain as well. And it's a real invested, collaborative approach to everyone buying into the ethos. This is what we stand for.
And I think that's true, whether you're a club with 20 junior age group sides and playing Premier Division cricket, or you're a village club that has a couple of junior teams and a first and a second team. Actually, those clubs that are really successful are the ones that are able to tie the whole club together. So you don't have an under 12s team in isolation to an under 14s and a junior section in isolation to a senior section, to be able to pull all those teams together and the whole club together. I guess within club cricket, and particularly junior cricket, parents are going to be a big part of that as well. What role do parents play within junior age group cricket through the pathway at Somerset, and what does that interaction and communication with parents look like from the club and how they get that across to them?
I think it's been a huge area of growth for us as a club. I think arrogantly we always felt we did it really, really well. The reality is that there's always room for improvement in how we communicate with parents. Parents have a real invested interest in their children, and you know they want them to have fun. They want to have enjoyment, and they want them to have a really positive experience. And I think one of the key things we've taken away in recent years is putting our ego to one side and having a really open door to listening to parents and understanding, you know, what's working really, really well, but what also is challenging them. And it's important that we collate that feedback. We openly then review it and discuss it. And where we can, we look to try and adapt and evolve how we operate based on that feedback. Now, at times that can be really, really challenging because there's other things that we need to be considering. But I think it's really, really important that we're creating platforms and opportunities for parents to give us feedback. And I think it's really important that we listen. And then depending on what feedback they give us, there'll be some things that are quite easy for us to change and evolve. There'll be some things that are going to be more challenging. What we must do is we must recognize that we've heard what the parents are saying to us, and we have to go back to them. And this may be difficult and challenging at times, but we've got to find the opportunity to be able to share them, that we've heard them, and we're looking at trying to do something about that. And then we'll keep them posted around how that evolves, because it's really, really important to get context. I've been guilty myself at times of being very, very blinkered. I've been guilty of feeling that I'm doing a really good job, and actually I've been ignoring some of the thoughts, feelings of how other people have been seeing how we've been operating, and I've, with time and with more maturity, I've become more open and aware of that. And actually, I found it really, really powerful. I took a huge amount of learning in the last couple of years with one specific example where I felt that I had communicated really, really clearly with an individual, and I felt that the support team around me had communicated really, really clearly with that individual. What we'd said is what we wanted to say, but what the individual heard was something completely different. And actually, they didn't hear the key message that we were looking to try and communicate with them. And one of the key pieces of learning I've taken away, it's really, really important when you share some information, is you get clarity back from that individual by asking them to repeat what they've taken away from the session before they leave. So you're clear that they've clearly understood the message that you've looked to share with them. And I think it's important that when, from a Somerset perspective, we look to hold an induction with the players' parents, with each age group, to set out with them what our expectations are for the coming season and the coming winter. And we also share with them how we're going to look to select teams and some of the rationale behind that. So that manages parents' expectations as well. And I think it's a useful hint for coaches when dealing with parents. If you can manage parents' expectations as much as you possibly can, you may find it's easier for you to be able to communicate when you're sharing some difficult news or you're making some difficult decisions. Just so everyone's on the same page and everyone understands the environment you're looking to operate in.
No, I think that's ultimately the key point to having happy parents and happy players and a happy place to be is that communication with them and particularly managing those expectations. And if as a team or as a club you've decided that you want all your players to have equal opportunities, to be able to be challenged in different areas, to experience different opportunities within a game, which means that your star player isn't opening the batting every week, isn't opening the bowling every week, but actually their role is that they're going to have to learn how to come in at number 6 when the team are 4 down for not many, or they're going to have to learn these different opportunities. And if parents and the players don't know that in advance and suddenly they turn up expecting their son, their daughter to open and they're down at 6 or 7, then yeah, you're going to have some people that are wondering what's going on. So yeah, those expectations and communicating that to them are really, really important, and finding out what it is going to be that your club's going to stand for, the purpose of those age groups. Yeah, completely agree with that one. We'll jump slightly. So you left Somerset, you went away with England for a few years and then came back in 2017. When you came back, had there been, had the place changed? Was it similar? And were there things that you identified that you felt you needed changing?
First and foremost, I was very excited about coming back. And I think it's very, very important to recognise that I sense that there have been a lot of very good things that have been undertaken in the years that I wasn't with the club. And I think a lot of people, need to have the appropriate credit for that. One of the things I was incredibly excited about is I know that Somerset really values developing young people. And Somerset had a very exciting crop of young players who had been very close to achieving some really significant things. And I knew that the system in place from a talent ID perspective and how the teams and the pathway was looking to really support and nurture young talent really excited me. But it was important for me to recognise that there was also some elements of the club's DNA, and we were lucky in the fact that there was a number of people, whether it was players or support staff, that had been at the club for quite a period of time and understood the club's DNA. For me to meet with those individually and collectively and to work collaboratively with them to understand some of the areas that we've moved away from that have been strengths of us as a club in the past, but also recognise where we want to go in the future. And, together we mapped out how we wanted to operate moving forward, how we're going to look to make some really good, effective, quick wins that was going to give us energy and give other people belief in what we were looking to try and do. And one of the key things for me was making sure we got the right people in the right places. So we looked at changing a couple of key positions, change their job descriptions, because we wanted to have a real focus on our talent pathway. And at that time, the head of talent pathway had a split role between working with the academy and the second 11, and recognizing actually that our future is all based around the players that are coming through our system. And, you know, we needed that person to lead that up and have full energy and commitment to that role. And then it was about making sure we got the right people with the right attributes, the right expertise in some other key specific positions that could then help support and nurture players coming through within the professional game. So there were a couple of initial things we looked to do, but we also wanted to get back to Somerset competing across all formats of the game and develop an environment that was really, really competitive. So if players had managed to get themselves selected in first team cricket, that they were being put under pressure to continue to keep performing by players who were also performing in second team cricket. I think we wanted some young players with huge potential coming through the system from the pathway and the academy that were also putting players under pressure within second team cricket. And then you feed that right down to the under 17s, the under 15s, the under 13s, the under 10s. You want this real healthy competition for places across the whole system that is encouraging people to keep getting better, or someone's going to go past you. But based around all of that was this real family feel, this real connection of people. So it was important for us that the first 11 head coach of the club had a real connectivity with the pathway, and a number of our coaches from the professional game work on our pathway. But we also wanted to connect our pathway coaches to the professional game. So it was important for us to create opportunities for them to get some graded exposure within the professional game as well. And then from that, we work from the under 10s right the way through to the professional team. It was all about creating opportunities for highly talented players to get some exposure at higher levels. So you might find an under 12 playing within the under 14s. You might find an under 14 playing within the under 17s. You might find, you know, an under 15 actually getting some second team competitive opportunities, but also creating some opportunities for players where you can bring some of the highly talented players together so they can play and compete with the best versus best across a range of age groups. That demonstrates this is what the next level is all about. Have a bit of a taste for it, understand where your strengths are, and understand whether there's some areas where at the moment you need to go away and keep working on. Players learn a lot from playing the game. And if we can create the opportunities for them to get some exposure with the right support around it, this challenges them to a point where it stretches them. It's a little bit uncomfortable. As long as we've got the right support around them, we can take them out at the right time, then they can go back into their environments and then have that self-awareness that they've got those areas to continue to keep developing in. And that's been a bit of a recipe for us in recent years. And it's something that we're continually looking to review and tinker with. How can we keep involved in this? Because over the last couple of years, I think a number of people within the organisation could be really, really proud in the role that they've played and how they've helped support and nurture the growth of the environment that does support, you know, talented people coming through the system and working towards achieving their aspirations.
No, and I think, you know, for everything that Somerset has done, it is very, very clear that young players are going to get an opportunity and homegrown players are going to get an opportunity within the side. And a 10-year-old kid playing cricket in Somerset can see that there's a direct pathway through to that first team and to the professional game, as well as in the surrounding counties as well. And I think pulling that into club world, and, you know, you can have a kid playing under 10 cricket that may know that there's a senior team, they may not, but actually for that to be an ambition for those guys, and to see that, whether it's first team players coming down to coaching every now and then, whether it's being able to go and watch on a Saturday afternoon, whatever it might be, but to see that route into senior cricket and to know that it's not a closed shop or whatever it might be, that actually when I get to 14, 15, I'm going to be given opportunities to play Sunday cricket, to play third team, second team cricket, and it's going to be an environment that I want to go and play in, and something to aspire to. So I think pulling those together is really, really important. And yeah, kind of lived and breathed in Somerset, and you can't say that for every county out there, that kids will see that direct link through.
Just on that, Scott, I think that's when we talk about culture and a positive culture. What we want is players really, really hungry to take that step up. And then when we create those opportunities, whether it's at Somerset or within our club environments, is that environment they come into has got to be really welcoming. It's got to be supportive. It's got to be fun. We've got to try and take the pressure off them as much as we possibly can, so they have a really enjoyable experience. And the enjoyable experience, it's not all about whether they take wickets or they score runs. It's actually about them walking away from that opportunity and being really excited that they want another go at it. And that's where it comes down to, the club really connecting. So in a hypothetical example, if we've got a young player who's 14 years old and, he's started to demonstrate some of his ability in 13 cricket, and if an opportunity presents itself in second team cricket, we want to be brave, we want to show some courage, and understanding that young person's going to be potentially the future of the club. We want to create that opportunity at that next level for them. But when they go into that environment, people within that environment have got a huge responsibility to make it really supportive, really enjoyable, it's fun, and it's a really positive experience. And it's not necessarily about what their performance on the park was about. It's about creating an environment that young player goes back into his level of cricket and is not satisfied with that anymore. He wants more of what he's just had a little taste of. And I think that's really, really important. I think one of the challenges that I've faced in the last couple of years is the reality is in professional sports, all about winning. And, there's been times where players haven't been available for us, and we've created opportunities for other players within the system. We've got some good information around those players. A lot of people have had eyes on how that player is progressing, and it is going to be a bit of a stretch for them. But one of the most exciting things about sport is seeing someone step up and having a really positive experience. And then they talk about it, and they talk about it to all their friends and all their mates. And, all of a sudden it becomes very infectious, that other people want to get involved with it. And that's the sort of culture that I think would be really positive for, everyone to be working towards.
No, and I think the point about not having players available, at Somerset, that might be because they're off around the world playing in different competitions at club level. And we had a conversation a minute ago around it. Club level, it might be there's a wedding on, or you've got players that only play 8, 9, 10 games a season. So actually you're always going to be filling in places. And for those younger players coming into the team, whether it's because you're short or whether it's because they performed at a different level, actually that environment that they come into is really, really key. And whether that's in those conversations, so I'm going to hazard a guess that the guys that came into the Royal London One Day team during the summer, because you had a lot of players out, they've not just come from nowhere. Like you said, you've had guys with eyes on them. I'm sure that there would have been conversations around those players so that when they come into that environment, whoever's leading it, so Paul Tweddle in the summer, will know those players and how to get the best out of them, and will understand them, as opposed to someone just dropping into a team. So those conversations from junior age group coaches with first, second team, third team captains, really, really key, actually, so that they understand the players that are coming into their team and how to get the best out of them and settle them into the team as well.
I think that's really important, Scott. And, it takes commitment. So an example of a young player who's come from the academy and he gets an opportunity in the Royal London One Day Cup. We need to know that player when he comes into our environment. We need to know him well enough to understand how he's going to add value to that environment, whether that's his character, whether that's his performance with the bat, the ball, or in the field. But what's more important is that we've got to understand the individual. And so we can create an environment that's not only safe for him, but so it's going to allow him to be the best version of himself. And I think what's really, really important to help that process is coaches. If I talk about Somerset specifically, but I'm sure a lot of people on the call can relate to this from club cricket or county age group cricket or schools cricket. We've all got a responsibility to be curious around the players that come in through the system below us, because if we invest time to find out about them, invest time to understand what their strengths and some of the areas that aren't so strong at this stage, it's going to help us create that environment. So when they come into a play for us, they've got the best chance of being the best version of themselves. If we don't have that curiosity, we don't have that investment, we don't put ourselves out and ask questions or go and watch them play in other environments, it's not going to have any benefit to us in the short term. So I truly believe connecting the club from bottom to top to bottom, as much as we possibly can, creates a real stronger awareness to enable us to create an environment that gets the best out of people.
Definitely. And I think there's a responsibility on clubs to facilitate that. And I think there's a responsibility on coaches as well. Actually, you're nurturing and developing these players at a young age, and then seeing them go off into senior cricket. Actually, I think there's a real big part to play in that transition as well. And that might be having a conversation with the captains of those senior teams they're going to play and saying, look, so-and-so is coming up to play from you. This is what you need to know about them. This is what will get the best out of them. All of those things that you've spoken about. And for those conversations to hopefully be two-way, but for there to be something there rather than a kid gets plucked from the under-14s straight into the second team and no one knows who he is when he turns up, and being able to bridge that is really important, I think, and exactly what you just said there, Andy. Conscious of time, so we'll jump a little bit more before we get a chance to get to you guys to ask some questions. Spoken a lot about cricket. You spent 10 years in the Marines. What were some of your biggest learnings around that environment and that culture from your time in the Marines?
The Marines was all about teamwork, and there was a realization that you can't have an ego. You've got to take your ego out of it, because when you're part of a team, you need people to perform their roles to enable you to be able to perform your role. Now, I was very, very fortunate that, my first opportunity before becoming a PTI was I was just a general service Royal Marine. So I was out in the field, yomping around, going from A to B, 25 miles, 40 pounds of kit, 60 pounds of kit on your back, whether it was in the jungle, whether it was in the Arctic, whether it was in the desert, whether it was in the mountains. But we were out there on our own. And for us to survive, we needed other people to support us. And so it was an awareness that without those other people supporting us, whether it was them bringing in food, bringing in water, bringing in ammunition, resupply, whatever it was, we couldn't function. And the one thing I took away from that was, it's not about me, it's about everybody else. But I've got to do my job. That's really, really important. And then when I moved into professional sport, one thing that became very, very clear to me was the importance of the player being at the center of everything we do, but putting a support network around him that would enable him to be able to perform his role really, really effectively. So that was strength and conditioning coach, a physiotherapist, and a nutritionist, whether it was the batting coaching support that he was given, the psychology support. These are some of the things that may not be feasible for club cricketers and clubs. But what's really important is that it's about the team. It's about coming together. It's about respecting, what value each individual brings to that team. It's about understanding that people are different. Now, the reality is that I didn't get on with everybody I worked with when I was in the Marines. But I had total respect for the role that they were performing that would enable me to be the best version of myself, to be able to function, to achieve the job that I had. And I really, really valued that. And one of the other things I really valued was how honest everybody was. Things have changed since, and I'm sure there's a number of things that is different now to compare to when I was in. And there were certainly times where I was told very black and white that I was doing something very, very wrong. And
I think we might have just lost him there. Hopefully he will be back with us at any moment. So whilst we wait for Saj to sign back on, if you've got any questions about any of the stuff we've spoken about this evening so far, stick them in the chat box, and as soon as Andy gets back, we'll let him finish off, and then we'll put those ones to him. So I'll give you a couple of minutes now to have those questions. Here we go. Andy, good to have you back. I was worried it was my internet, but I think it would have been better if I disappeared as opposed to you. We'll let you finish off what you were saying.
Just had a power cut, so I don't know what happened there. You know, my time in the Marines helped shape the way I see the world, and I've been very around me that have also helped influence how I see the world. I've had some great mentors, and I think one of the great things about club cricket and county age group cricket and schools cricket is that there's some really, really great, so much experience that we can all take so much learning from, and I'm very grateful for that. But the key thing for me is that there's been a number of transferable things from the Marines to professional sport. And one of the key learnings I took from the Marines was that I had some really, really good people around me who knew what they were doing. And I think it's really, really important to surround ourselves as much as we possibly can with really good people. And, you know, being very, very open to how other people see the world and listening to that. And the one final thing for me is it's about taking my ego out of things and understanding where I fit in the whole machine, and allowing people to demonstrate what they can achieve, listen to them, understanding some of the positive but also constructive feedback that they're giving us, because people share things with you because they want good things. And I'm very, very fortunate that I've got some very, very good people around me, and hopefully we can continue the journey moving forward based on some of the strong values and beliefs that we've all brought to the table over a number of years.
Brilliant. Andy, thank you very much for your time this evening. Guys, over to you. If there's any questions, we've got nearly 10 minutes left. Feel free to put those in the chat box, and we can put them to Andy. But thank you, Andy. We'll see if anything comes in. So there's one that's been sent directly to me. Muzz says hello.
Hi, Muzz.
A question around the balance of kind of the different styles, so that intense or collaborative style approach and different styles, and how there's that potential friction when different people kind of clash and that kind of stuff, and how you overcome that.
I think it's a really good question, and you know, you've identified there that people are different, and I think I referred to it earlier on around the transition, that during transition, some people are going to come with you straight away and they're going to just follow you, and they've got lots of energy, and there's going to be a group in the middle that are just a little bit unsure, so you've got to try and work with them to influence them, but listen to them as well. And you can have some people that are a little bit slower to understand the direction you're looking to move going forward. And for me, it's always about listening and then trying to share some really good, strong rationale around the direction of travel you're looking to go with, but also understanding that, you know, there's going to be some small steps that we need to achieve along that journey, so they understand what the progress is going to look like. So you need to communicate really, really well. The reality is that, you know, I'm quite an open and approachable guy, so I think. I'm sure there's a few on the call that probably will challenge that. But there are people that see the world differently and feel very strongly and like to communicate their views. And I think that's fantastic. And I've got to be open to listening to that. And I've got to show some empathy around how they see the world. And sometimes it's about not actually having a response at the time. It's about me going away and reflecting on that and trying to put myself in their position. Now, I learned something relatively recently about the empty seat in the room. So if you imagine that there's you in the room with a table and there's a chair opposite you, and that chair is empty, and then someone comes to sit on that chair and someone shares with you some very, very strong views on how they feel and how they see something, I think it's important that you listen to that. And then if you can imagine them leaving the room, and then you change your position, go around the other side of the table and put yourself in that position and try to see the world through their eyes, and try and understand their reality, I think it gives it some perspective, some context to then to be able to go back to that person and have quite a rational conversation that hopefully you can find some middle ground on. And that's the approach that I've looked to take. I've seen a number of examples where people have clashed, very strong personalities with very strong views, and you know, it's not a comfortable thing to observe sometimes. And sometimes it's important that we take ourselves into a position where we can take a step back and try to see it from the other person's perspective. And I think that would be something that I would hugely recommend to people to consider when they find themselves in a situation where someone's got a very strong view that may be opposing to yours.
Nice, thank you. Next question from Steve. How long does it take to change culture?
It's a great question, Steve. So ideally you want it happening overnight, but the reality is that that's not going to happen. So I wanted it to happen quite quickly. But at the outset, when I took over as head coach in 2006, and we had that really tough year, you know, if we were lucky, we might see some positive change in 2007, 2008. We were very fortunate that, you know, we made some decisions that people bought into. We got a lot of energy. We've got the core group moving with us very, very quickly. And it's easy for me to sit here now and look back at 2007. Whereas the reality is that the whole culture of the club probably took 10 years to be in a position that it's in now. It's taken a lot of time. And I think if I was to go into a new environment now, I'd be very, very clear through collaboratively working with other people within the organisation and the club around understanding where we are right now and where we want to get to within a certain time period. And then having the aspiration through certain small steps to achieve that objective. And then always keep imagining, what's it going to look like in 2 years' time? What's it going to look like in 3 years' time? Because if you try and get your goals, try and achieve your goals too soon, because they're too big, you're going to be disappointed. Keep them realistic, keep them manageable, keep reinforcing what the messages are and what the vision is. And then when you look back in 2 years' time, you'll be amazed in what you've achieved. But changing a culture and for it to be embedded, so everybody's living it as much as they possibly can, takes a lot of time. And that's the reality of it. Be patient.
Brilliant. Final one from Alistair. What advice do you have when lobbying for support for example, physios or mental support?
Intriguing question. What advice do I, can you just repeat the question, Scott?
So if we go with the first part of it, what advice do you have when lobbying for support? So I guess if you're looking to implement changes, and you might want to kind of take some people with you to try and soften the blow, or whatever it might look like, how would you go about doing that?
Okay, so a live example for me was that something will happen and I'll have an idea around a solution of how I think we can implement change on that. So that's my instinct. And then the first thing I would do is I would consider who else might have a really valid view on that. And so I'd try and ask a very open question to somebody else to obtain their view on that. And I might look at 2 or 3 people that I identify to get their views. And I might look at 2 or 3 different people around the organization with different perspectives to get some wider context on that. And then I'd look to take a step back from that and then look to consider all that feedback I've got and what their thoughts and feelings are and what their suggestions are, and then look to come back with an idea with those individuals around talking through what it might look like and how we might achieve that. And again, being collaborative, being inclusive, understanding what their feedback and thoughts are on that are, and then I might look to take it to a bit of a wider base of people to get their views and thoughts of it. Depending on how much time you've got, depends on how long you can take to go through that process. I might have to do that across a period that might be 2 months, but it might be much shorter than that. It might be 2 weeks, in which case I've got to go through that process much quicker. Sometimes, because the timeline's so short, you're going to have to use your experience and your instinct to probably identify one person that you can bounce an idea off to get their thoughts on before you make a decision of how you're going to look to try and influence something moving forward. So I think it's very much timeline dependent, and it's about understanding who can help support you to get yourself in a position to be able to action what you're thinking of the change is going to be moving forward.
Brilliant. Andy, I think on behalf of everyone on the call tonight, thank you very much for giving up your time. Some really interesting and useful tips there on not only what it looks like in the professional game, but actually how that can translate across to club cricket, and hopefully lots of useful things to guys and girls on the course to go away with. So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone on the call, and good luck for the summer. Hope it goes really well, and we'll hopefully look forward to seeing you around the county ground as well during the summer. But thank you very much for this evening.
Thanks very much, Scott. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully I'll see 1 or 2 of you around across the summer. And please make yourself aware to me. Come and say hello, and let's pick up on some of these conversations that we've had tonight. I'd really enjoy that. But thanks very much, everybody.